Star Trek, one of the greatest and most longest running sci-fi franchises of all time. Starting in the mid-60s with the original series, running all the way through the present day with the new series that CBS has put out, has created great stories, great characters, and has also created a bunch of highly contested debates among fandom, both old and new. One of those happens to be the movies, which ones are better than the others. And in today's video, I'm going to address this from my point of view as a lifelong Star Trek fan. So sit back, grab your popcorn. This should be interesting. Let's get into it. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is William. I am the Ramblin Man. Welcome back to another video. I've been wanting to do some more content on my YouTube channel for quite some time now, and I figure why not start off with something simple, something fun. And I've seen a bunch of folks that I watch do these. I know Mr. Matty Plays is one of the ones that inspired me to do one of these, so shout out to him. Like, he needs my shout out, but still, Mr. Matty Plays. Star Trek has been a lifelong passion of mine. I love the lore. I love the world, the universe that it's built. And I'm a lover of all the movies, whether they be good or bad, you know. So let's hop into this and see what my takes are and how they're going to be taken by you, the audience. But before we get there, if you like what you see, please do me a favor and hit that like button down below. It really helps out the algorithm and helps me get discovered. And the more I'm discovered, the more my content gets out there, and I can do more of these videos for you folks. I also stream on Twitch every Tuesday and Saturday after 4 p.m. Eastern, so check me out over there. So without any further ado, let's get into this, shall we? Alright, so as you can see here, we've got the list of movies down below, and we're going to start from the very left to the end. So first off, we have Star Trek 3, Search for Spock. This movie is one of what's known as, in the Star Trek fandom, is known as the middle story of the Holy Trinity of the original series. That would be the second, the third, and the fourth movies. It's great storytelling. It's a beginning action, a middle action, and an ending action. And for me, Star Trek 3 is absolutely in the S tier. Now, for me, any Star Trek movie to go into the S tier has to be check all the boxes of canon, story, character, and just overall memorability. So it checks off all of those boxes. So how well does the movie fit into the lore? How consistent is it in continuing what's been built? Character, does it develop any characters? Does it stray too much from character that we've seen previously in other series? Does it stay true to the characters? Story. Does the story draw you in? Does the story make you feel like you can mirror it to your own life in some way? Like, and the big part is, how well does it live in the spirit of Roddenberry's original vision for Star Trek? So, and for me, Star Trek 3 absolutely ticks all those boxes. You know, Star Trek 3 was one of those movies that I can go back to time and time and time again and just enjoy. I don't care how many times I see it, it still gets me, you know, when, you know, there come that very first scene, from the very first scene, when you see, you know, them painting into the Enterprise and Kirk giving his captain's log about what happened in the previous movie, and, you know, they're coming into space dock, and, well, I'm getting a little ahead of myself there, but they're talking about how one of the guys approaches Kirk and, you know, says, "Is there going to be a reception party when we get in? A hero's welcome, is that what you like?" Well, God knows there should be. This time we've paid for the party in our dearest blood. You know, it just sets up so beautifully, you know, kind of, you know, what's it called? Daisy chains what happened before with the current movie. And you can jump right into the movie and enjoy it without actually having to watch what happened before, but it makes you want to watch what happened before. Again, another great moment in there is when they get into space dock and they see the Excelsior and they're coming home. It's a big coming home moment, big hero shot moment for the Enterprise and crew, and for space dock itself. And then they get in the space dock and, you know, there's an intruder in Spock's room, and come to find out it's McCoy, and he's acting strange and weird, and we come to find out that he's actually got Spock's Katra, and then using that to leapfrog into the great moments between Kirk and Sarek, and before that, the moment between, you know, Kirk and the crew, you know, outside of the Enterprise, and wondering what's going to happen to the crew, to the Enterprise, and to their careers. There's great themes in this movie of change and loyalty and doing the right thing regardless of the cost, which is one of the things I love about this movie. And the biggest thing that makes me love this movie and put it in the S tier is just the whole moment of Spock's resurrection, and that's the biggest moment. The second biggest moment to me is the stealing of the Enterprise. You see all the crew working together out of loyalty to Spock, and for me, that's why Search for Spock goes into the S tier, to the top tier. It goes into the best tier. All right, so next we have Star Trek Beyond. Now, for me, I actually had to refresh my memory on this because it's been a while since I've seen it. I couldn't exactly remember what it was about or what the ending was. But basically, for me, the JJ verse is a sore subject because, yes, it brings Star Trek back, but it's not really Star Trek in my mind. It's based too much in action and not enough on character development. Through all three of these movies, it's all action. There's no real time spent on character. It's like they tried to hit a bunch of dialogue points without having any depth to it. There's no real depth to any of these movies, in my opinion. They're all, you know, big audience cheer points, and there's no there, basically, in my mind. And with that said, Star Trek Beyond is actually one of the more enjoyable of the three in my mind. I think it's on the same level as the reboot Star Trek, the original JJ Star Trek. So with that said, I'm going to put both of these. I'm going to go Star Trek Beyond's a solid C tier, just because it's enjoyable to watch. It canon wise, it's not that great. Character wise, yeah, they've got great character, but they're not the characters that we know from the Prime universe. And some of the lore is off, and some of the technology is off, simply because yes, they went back in time and changed some things character wise when Nero came back in time. However, everything up to that point was the same. So everything that happened with Archer and after that between Archer and Kirk remained the same, period. So that means, you know, the technology would have advanced the same way that it did when in Archer's time, and Kirk would have Kirk would have been living in the Constitution class era, in that technology era. I mean, granted, when those were originally made, they were made in the 60s, but still, I mean, you could modernize that technology and make it look, I mean, I think they did it right with kind of what they did with the bridge technology, but in beyond with the Yorktown, that was kind of way beyond what Starfleet could have done, even imagined for the 23rd century. So with that being said, I'm going to put Beyond, and I'm going to go ahead and put the original Star Trek into the C tier as well, because they're both enjoyable. They're both great to watch, but they're not good Star Trek movies, in my opinion. Now, I'm gonna skip the next two, and I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna put Star Trek 2 in the S category, because, and I'm even gonna left justify this. So I'm gonna put this as the #1 film in the best tier category, simply because this is the film that kicked it all off. This is the film that revitalized Star Trek. This is the film that made people fall in love with Star Trek all over again. And what's not to love? You've got this Shakespearean-esque story. You've got, you know, Ricardo Montalban reprising his role as Khan, who, I mean, if you haven't seen Space Seed, go check that out. Such a great episode of the original series, and he brings it to another level in this. You've got themes of death and no-win scenarios and change and getting old and hope. You've got it all. It's such an amazing journey, a ride to go with these characters. It's emotional. It's up, it's down. It's everything you want in a Star Trek movie, and indeed in a movie in general. So that's why, to me, this is the best of the Holy Trinity. And one thing I can think to sum up how I feel about this movie is, in the movie, my favorite part of this entire movie, not to say that every other part is not great, but my favorite part of this movie, and the scene that gives me chills every single time I see it, is Kirk gets the information that the Genesis device is in trouble, that Carol Marcus and her crew are in trouble, and the science station she's on needs to be checked out. Kirk gets orders to check it out, and he's going to Spock, because Spock is captain of the Enterprise, which is a training vessel at this point, which goes in that, you know, changing, you know, in getting older theme. And he goes to Spock's quarters, and they're talking, and he's telling him, "Look, just get me to just give me the regular one, which is the space station. He's like, of course. And of course, you take command. Now, Kirk is an admiral at this point. He's no longer a captain. He's taken an office job at Starfleet, and up till this point, you can see that Kirk still has that fire in his eyes of wanting to be an explorer. And we all know Kirk is an explorer. He's not an office gun. Even in the first one, you could see, which I'll talk about, but you could see that he is wanting that chair back. But getting into the scene, you know, he's like, of course you take the ship, you take command. And he's like, no, that won't be necessary. Just give me the regular one. He's like, and Spock says to him, Jim, you come from a false presumption. I have no ego to bruise. I am Vulcan. It is clear in the regulations that while as a training instructor captaining a training ship, I am content to command the Enterprise. Should we go on active duty, it is very clear by the regulations that the senior officer on the ship must take command. And Kirk is hesitant. And, you know, it's a great combining of all those themes of Kirk knows he's getting older. He knows that things are changing. He knows things have changed. He wants it, but he's not sure if it's right. And at that point, it always gives me chills. And I just love that back and forth between the characters. It's one great moment of friendship that you see between the two characters, and it solidifies that they are truly friends. And more than that, I think they're family at this point. And they know each other so well. So that's one of the scenes that sums up this movie, in my opinion. All right, so moving on, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to talk about the third of the Holy Trinity, and that's going to go up here on the S tier as well. Simply because it finishes out this story arc. You get to see the ramifications of what happened with Star Trek 3. We get to see a new Enterprise. We get the crew back together, and this is the start of Kirk's second 5-year mission, if I remember the lore correctly. And it's just an all-around fun movie to see our characters in our time, in the late 20th century. And you get to see great character moments. You get to see Kirk and Spock traveling on a bus and walking through downtown San Francisco. And you get to see Scotty and Bones and Sulu walking through downtown San Francisco as well, and, you know, trying to get materials to build some things for the ship that they need to repair. And then you get to see Uhura and Chekhov trying to look for nuclear vessels, and then finding the Enterprise, the aircraft carrier Enterprise, which really wasn't the Enterprise. It was I think it was the Hornet or something, but that's neither here nor there. But it's a great overall fun movie. And one of the best scenes in this movie that still gives me chills to this day watching it is when they come back to Starfleet after saving the planet from the probe, and they're standing trial for everything they did to try to get back to Spock. And, you know, they're walking in, and then Spock is in uniform, and the crew is walking in, and Spock comes down from the audience and stands beside them, and the president says, "Mr. Spock, you do not stand accused." And the greatest return of loyalty that I've ever seen in any Vulcan, let alone Spock. His response was simple, and is something that I would have said myself. "Mr. President, I stand with my shipmates." And that's it. That's all was needed. And that It was short, simple, but it made the point clear. And in my mind, it's a standout moment from the movie. And there was a lot of standout moments, but that was the top of it for me. All right. So next up on the list, and now we're gonna finish out going in order here. Star Trek First Contact. The only Next Generation movie I'm putting up in the top tier, the S tier. Simply because it's such a well done movie. It's such a well done movie. From beginning to end, story-wise, lore-wise, character-wise. I mean, from the opening, you get to see, you know, they get to Starfleet's going to entangle with the Borg once again. The Borg's attacking Earth, and you know, Starfleet wants the Enterprise and Picard just not in the situation because they feel Picard's a risk. And you know, you get to see that back and forth between Picard and Riker talking about the orders and saying your experience with the Borg makes you the perfect man to lead this fight. And Picard's just simply not content, but he's reluctantly following orders in his mind. And then you get to see them, you know, listening to the battle going on, and then you see this moment of click in Picard's mind where, you know, he says, I'm about to disobey direct orders. Anybody has a problem with that, say so now. It will be noted in my log. And then you get to see this great character moment with Data, who says, you know, I believe I speak for all of us, sir, when I say to hell with our orders. When I first saw that, I was like, that's something Spock would have said. I guarantee that sounds like right up Spock's alley. It just kind of connected that for me. And then you get to see, you know, the Enterprise E flying into battle with the Borg and saving the day, saving, you know, Worf and the Defiant. You get to see Worf come back on board, and you get to see the character moments between Worf and Picard's one said, no, Riker. Riker says tough little ship, and Worf's like little in his Worf manner. And then Riker further joking with him, you know, when Picard asks him to take tactical, he's like, you do remember how to fire phasers, right? It's just great, you know, like they're friends, like they've worked together for years, and that repertoire, it's just great there. And then you know, then you get the time travel element of going back to, you know, the first contact with the race, which I'll get to in a second. Bringing humanity in the stars, and Zefram Cochrane making the first warp flight. James Cromwell as Zefram Cochrane was a genius casting move. That man was fantastic in that role. Alfre Woodard as Lily was another great casting choice, and another great character choice. I love that dynamic of her playing off Picard. I love to see, you know, Geordi just kind of fanboying with Cochrane, you know, and you get to see, you don't see much of the Borg, but the Borg are felt through this film, right? And that's how the Borg should have been from the beginning. They should have this menacing presence that's always felt. And Picard's got kind of this, and there's a theme of Moby Dick going through this entire this is why this is on the S tier, because it calls back and parallels to a lot of things in real life, and that's why First Contact for me is great. But the defining moment of this movie is right at the end when Picard and his team leave and they save history, and they beam up the ship. We're left, but before that, you know, they're all standing around, and all of a sudden, this is after the warp flight, and all of a sudden a ship comes out of the sky and lands at Zefram, at the bar where they're at. And Cochrane's talking to Picard and Riker, and they're like, should we be worried, what have you? And like, they're here to meet the man who flew that warp ship. Now, when I first saw this movie, I didn't really know too much of the lore, the deep of the lore. I was still young at the time. I think I was still like 17, 18 at the time. When did this movie come out? But yeah. But yeah, I had no idea who the race was that was so yeah, this was 1996. So yeah, wow, I wasn't even 18 at the time. I was still in middle school, I believe. But yeah, like I said, I had no idea who it was, and I think a lot of Star Trek fans didn't really know who it was. Some people probably guessed it, and then as soon as they stepped out and you see the pointed ears, you're like, my first thought was Romulan, but being young and naive and not really knowing, it was the Vulcans. And that moment between when the Vulcan steps down and I know I used to know the Vulcan's name that made first contact, but I'm not even gonna try. It's in the, I don't even know if it's in the movie, but I do know it was addressed in Enterprise, but that's neither here nor there. We'll discuss that in a series video. But anyway, he walks down, and you know, he takes he's already taken the hood off. He walks down and he gives the Vulcan salute, and he says, "Live long and prosper." And then you see Cromwell trying to do the whole thing. I don't think Cromwell could actually do it, is why that was left in. And then he just goes, reaches his hand out and says, "Thanks." And then you get the moment of them coming into the bar, and then Picard's team beams out, and then Cromwell plays music, and the Vulcans are sitting in the bar drinking, and Cromwell's dancing. It's a great way, and they pan out and they're good. That was probably the greatest moment of the film for me, the defining moment of the film. So that's why it goes in the S tier. Okay, so here we go. Star Trek Generations. What can I say about Star Trek Generations? Okay, so on its face, this movie was supposed to be this great Star Trek film to bridge between one generation and the other. Picard and Kirk finally meet. And we didn't get that. We got an abomination of a story, in my opinion. I haven't seen it in years. I thought that the opening idea of, you know, Kirk finally giving up command, finally stepping out of the limelight as a captain. He's, you know, seeing off the newly commissioned Enterprise B with a new captain, Captain Harriman, and apparently everything comes in on Tuesday. You watch the movie, you'll get that joke. But Kirk, Scotty, and Chekhov are on the bridge. So they're out for a maiden voyage, which is only supposed to be a short, like, out and back, right? And there's all the Starfleet and Federation news people there, and, you know, it's this great, you know, kind of fish out of water. Like, they don't know how to take this, you know, popularity, but it's the first time you actually get to see that these characters are actually popular in their time, that they're actually like celebrities in their time, which I thought was a nice touch. And then you got the ribbon and Kirk supposedly dying, and the look on Scotty's face when he goes down to check on him. The defining moment of the opening for me was when they finally realize somebody needs to go down and do something so they can get out of it. And Harriman says, I'm gonna go and take care of this. You have the con. And Kirk has a split second of hesitation where he looks at the chair, and you think he's gonna do it, but he says, no, your place is on the bridge, you're the captain. This was Kirk restraining himself. This was Kirk realizing that his place is no longer on the bridge. This is not his ship. Harriman is the captain. So he goes and then eventually ends up what we're supposed to believe is dying, but he ends up in the Nexus ribbon, and he ends up meeting he ends up meeting Picard like a minute later or something, by his recollection of things. It's all relative in the ribbon, apparently. But that's where the whole fun of it ends. I mean, to me, there were some fun moments, like, you know, the promotion of Worf on the holodeck with the ship, and the walking the plank and all of this. It was great. But to me, I think the Data storyline was botched. It was great to see him do the thing with the emotion chip and all of this, but I think it went too far, too long, and it was too much. That's the one thing I say about this movie. They try to do too much within 2 hours. This felt like this could have been an entire season of the show. They just try to cram too much, try to get too many things done. This movie felt like too many hands in the pot, in my opinion, and that's what made this movie just garbage, in my opinion. But the cherry on top, so to speak, is the death of Kirk, which pissed me off. And it pissed me off even more when I started getting more into the lore and learning about it. Is they really screwed the pooch, because Kirk already set up his own death, and they completely ignored it. In Star Trek V, Kirk says, as he's falling from the Mount Yosemite, a mountain in Yosemite Park, and then he's sitting around the campfire with Spock and Bones later, he says, even as I was falling, I knew I wasn't going to die. And Spock asked how. He said, I've always known when I die, I'll die alone. And with Kirk, dying alone means dying with no allies, no friends around. Now, granted, Kirk didn't have any of his close friends around, but he had his ally in Picard, his new ally and new friend. Just the way that they killed him pissed me off. I'm not pissed off that they killed him. It's the way they did it, and it just seemed unjustified for such a great character. He survived so much only to go down being killed by a falling bridge. I mean, really? Anyway, but I think they wasted a complete opportunity to do more with that character, and Picard and the Next Generation. But I digress from that. Which Shatner actually wrote a book series. You should check it out. Titled The Return, which dealt with the after effects of Viridian 3 and Generations. But for me, this absolutely goes in the F tier. It's a horrible, horrible Star Trek movie, in my opinion. All right, so Star Trek Insurrection, for me, is an A tier. I know that's going to be a little bit of a... shock, a little bit of a unpopular opinion, but to me, Star Trek Insurrection is fantastic. I love that movie. It's a great Star Trek movie. It feels like a very long episode of Star Trek. And for me, the defining moment of Insurrection of the movie is when Picard realizes what's going on and that the Admiral is involved and that Starfleet is involved in this, you see him walk to his cabin. He starts taking off his rank, and next scene you see him in the captain's yacht, you know, in civvies, and he's about to go do something he knows he could lose his command for, and he's trying to keep everybody at bay, and he's trying to save these people and help these people, and his crew just walk onto the yacht and say, look, you're in this, we're in this, let's do this. And that to me was what made this movie great, was the camaraderie of the entire crew, and the fact this was essentially a 1.5 hour long 2 hour long episode, which I enjoy the episode. So that's why it goes in the A tier. It's just solid story, solid characters, all around. But it's not really the epic levelness of these 4 movies, of these 4. So not the best, but still good. I've already talked about Star Trek, JJ Trek, enough. I'm just gonna put this. Actually, for me, this goes down here in the D column, because to me, this lacked imagination, this lacked creativity. It was just a retread of the Wrath of Khan, and a horrible retread of the Wrath of Khan, in my opinion. That's all I'm gonna say. The only saving grace of this movie was Quintos, and Ricardo Montalban played what he was given to work with. Or did I say Ricardo Montalban? I mean Benedict Cumberbatch. For me, Star Trek Nemesis is an A movie. Again, this is a really long Star Trek episode, a series episode. It dealt with some threads within the series. It was a great finale. I think it was a great finale for the Next Generation crew. This movie got a lot of flack, but I enjoyed it as a Star Trek fan. If you followed the series, if you followed the stories, I think you would agree with me that it's a great Star Trek episode. And this movie made me fall in love with Tom Hardy. This is the movie that made me stand out and say, whoa, Tom Hardy, he's going to do something. So I love Tom Hardy in this movie. He was the standout character. And then, of course, the death of Data. And this kind of mirrors Star Trek 2 in a way, because it kind of leaves you with a little bit of hope. Because in Star Trek 2, Spock was killed off, and when it was filmed, they didn't. Nimoy never expect to return as Spock, but the director of the time, when they filmed the scene of Spock going into the warp tube there to repair the warp nacelles, or to repair the warp engine, he says, after he knocks out McCoy, is there anything you can do within this scene before as we film it, to give us a little hope that maybe we can bring your character back at some point? And that's where the whole remember thing came in. So, and I say that because in here you've got the B4 android with, the whistling of the song that Data was singing at Riker's wedding. So it's I don't know if they intended that to be a finale, or if they expected to make another one, but they gave you a little bit of hope. And this movie just all around fun, all around good story, good characters, and it had some themes in here that you can catch on to if you're paying attention. For me, again, Star Trek the Motion Picture, great. It's not as great as these 4 up here, but it's still a great Star Trek movie. It revitalized Star Trek for a new generation, and as an older Star Trek fan, I very much appreciate the pace, the letting the characters simmer, and the dialogue, and just letting things flow naturally. I enjoyed it. It felt like, again, in a good way, a really long episode of Star Trek. And it tied in some things between lore and real life, and it just connected to you in a way that it connected to me in a way that, you know, I don't think any of the other movies on this tier have. So for me, it's definitely a great Star Trek movie, but it's not the ultimate tier. For me, Star Trek 6 is a B, as well as Star Trek 5, because while they are both good Star Trek movies, they're not great. So for me, these are the best, great, good, horrible, what the fuck. All right. I should do this with the with the cursor. So again, those categories is the best, great, good, horrible, and what the fuck. Okay. And as you can see, the only movie in that category is Generations, in my opinion. But anyway, but yeah, Star Trek 6. Actually, you know what? I'm throwing that up here because it's still a great Star Trek movie. It deals with, you know, espionage. It deals with themes of, again, Shakespearean themes come into play here. You deal with, it mirrors the end of the Cold War. It's essentially taking what happened in real life with the Cold War and putting it with the Klingons and the Federation, and they got to find a way to make peace and work together. And it's the final movie of the original series. It's about endings and hope for new beginnings later, which I think they did a fantastic job. And the highlight for me of Star Trek 6 is the outro, the final captain's log of Kirk. You know, talking about how this is the last cruise of the Enterprise under my command. This ship and its legacy will shortly become the responsibility of a new crew, and to them and our posterity we commit our future. And again, going back to those themes of change and evolution. And then Star Trek 5 was Shatner's, I think it was his first his major movie directorial debut, and he did an okay job. I still watch this movie, still love it. I think that I just don't think it's good, but it's not as good as these, but it's not as bad as it's not as good as these in my opinion, but it's not as bad as these. So for me, it kind of falls in between, and it's still it checks off the boxes of story and character. Lore is kind of iffy. Overall message of how it fits in the Roddenberry's vision. That's why I'm putting, because it deals with the whole God thing, which I thought was kind of brilliant on the writer's part, but at the same time, I don't think Roddenberry ever envisioned dealing with, you know, the Yahweh, the Christian God. But, you know, it is what it is. It's enjoyable. I thought it was kind of an ingenious way. I don't think it was executed very well, but it was still good to watch, in my opinion, and I'll still watch it to this day. So yeah, that's my listing for the Star Trek movies. What do you think? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Did I make any sense? Was I rambling too much? Well, I'm the Ramblin Man. Get over it. But yeah, so that's my my take. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Let's have a conversation. And man, this is a 45-minute video. My apologies for the length, but I hope you guys really enjoyed this conversation. And I really want to do more of these and talk about nerdy and geeky things, gaming things. And maybe this would be how I'll use this to talk about some geek culture, nerd culture stuff. So maybe that'll be how we have these discussions from here on out. All right. But anyway, like I said, like this video, drop a like if you sat through this entire 45 minutes, and if you enjoyed it. If you're coming back and you're watching this video after a while, after an absence from myself, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And don't forget that I stream on Twitch every Tuesday and Saturday after 4 p.m. Eastern, so check me out over there as well. Links will be in the description box below. So until next time, ladies and gentlemen, my name is William. I am the Ramblin' Man, and we'll catch you on the next one. Have a good one, y'all.